Because Bitcoin is a game that serves the self-interest of every player, it's only a matter of time before everyone is playing. Yeah. And I actually replied to that, or I quote posted it. And I said, Bitcoin turns our innate greed and need for self-preservation into a mutually beneficial game that empowers and enlightens each player.
Yes.
You know, we see that because Bitcoin exists and more people adopt it, they are incentivized to contribute to it in whatever way, which makes it stronger, lower entropy, etc. Like everything we talked about. You know, so Bitcoin is a mirror to the fiat money system that we are stuck in. You know, it shows you the flaws. Why do you think that is so profound and even maybe even liberating to the people that eventually decide to play that different game? I think, well, you were also an example of that.
Yeah. So this is great. It's a great one. So I want to disambiguate self-interest versus greed first.
Mm-hmm.
This is the domain of the ego, right? Where the ego properly checked is actually really useful, right? When the saber-toothed tiger jumps through the window, I guess those are extinct. When the bear jumps through the window, you want to have that healthy response of like, let me get out of here, you know, like that egoic, let me get out of here. That's self-interest, and I think that's a great thing. I actually want everyone in the world to maximize their self-interest. Where I would disambiguate that from greed is where someone seeks to advance their self-interest at the expense of someone else's self-interest. So self-interest maximized in a world that is universally consensual, that all interactions are consent-based, that makes a lot of sense to me. But what I would call greed is when we cross that line into coercion, right? It's where now like, hey, I'm hungry. I have self-interest. I'm hungry, but I'm going to steal your sandwich because I'm too lazy to make a sandwich, right? So I'm just going to benefit from your work real quick. And then we're all done, right? I would call that greed. Now, a lot of people associate greed with like the accumulation of money. Well, my question would be, how did you get the money? Did you go out into the world and obtain it consensually, right? Did you give people solutions to their problems that they paid you for?
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I want as many of those people as possible. I want as many rich, pure entrepreneurs as possible, because that means they have solved a vast quantity of human problems and they've been rewarded appropriately. There's nothing greedy about that at all. Now, if you instead are a statesman or a mafioso and you've been $5 wrench attacking people to obtain all of your money, well, then I would call that greed, right? You have benefited at the expense of others. So I think we actually want to maximize in this world. It's like, there's like this, and look, the devil's in the details, right? Like I would say the line is private property, but even that it can be a little bit nuanced at times, right? You have to read a book like The Ethics of Liberty by Rothbard to really get into these edge cases about, you know, when is private property actually violated in all these different situations. The visualization I have is like, there's basically this like speedometer, if you will, and we want to push competition and self-interestedness up to the maximum. Actually, we want to max that out. We want everyone to act as most self-interested way as possible. You know, this is where maybe someone like Ayn Rand would agree with me too on her essay, The Virtue of Selfishness. But what you don't want to do, there needs to be a hard line on that speedometer, basically, that it doesn't cross into the red zone, which is when you start having people advancing their own individual self-interest at the expense of other individual self-interest. Once you get into that, it's cannibalism, basically, right? Like people are feeding off of one another rather than feeding one another in kind of a proverbial entrepreneurial sense.
Isn't this why the rules are needed that we talked about?
Exactly. You need the fixed rules, the unbreakable rules, right? So if someone does violate the property of someone else, there needs to be a penalty, or there needs to be an incentive not to violate the property of someone else, or it needs to be made very difficult and expensive and risky to violate the property of someone else. That's why Bitcoin is so impactful, right? You hold Bitcoin in a multi-sig. Well, the premise of violating someone's property, if they've held that Bitcoin, they put that Bitcoin in a proper custody schema, the option virtually goes away, right? It's like, I can't $5 wrench attack the guy. I can't inflate it. I can't seize it. Well, I guess I'm just going to go be an entrepreneur then and try to, give him something valuable for his Bitcoin.
Yeah,
Work for it. Yes.
That's it. Yeah.
So that's it. It's like, we want to max out self-interestedness, but with that hard line of respect for private person and property. And then that prevents the manifestation of greed. But even just a little bit, it's such a fine line, because once you get even a little bit into that greed, you start creating these perverse incentives where like people are now disincentivized from producing as much. They're more incentivized to become a criminal. And if that game gets deep enough into the red zone, then the social fabric falls apart and we just become animals, basically.
Today I had a conversation. We talked about, the Jetsons in the 60s or the 70s, the TV show. Oh yeah, like in 2020 we'll have flying cars and we'll have all these things. And all these thoughts at that time were pretty rational, right? Like, oh, if this continues like this, then we'll get there. But we're not there, and in some cases we actually go back in time. For example, the bread is $4 and not 50 cents is what I always say. That's what we're seeing. I do think, and I wonder if you agree, because of the flawed fiat system, it won't take long before people have to. Like, they have to realize that this is a flawed system and they have to do something. Yeah. What is your idea around how we can help more people wake up to this mathematically assured destruction of the money system that they live in? Like, how can we... You've been trying also for a few years.
Well, I have, and I've thought about the question a lot, frankly. And in the last kind of minute here that I have, I'll say the tongue-in-cheek way, which is, you either take the orange pill voluntarily now, or you take the orange suppository involuntarily later. All right, it's like you're either going to study and learn about how you're getting scammed and you can opt out of the scam, or at some point the scam is going to force you to figure that out. Right. And you're much better off. It's much more cost effective to learn from the mistakes of others than to learn from your own mistakes. Although most of us learn from our own mistakes. So what can we do? Obviously, education is a big one, something we both looks like committed our lives to, at least to some extent. But I actually think it's more useful to build businesses that make it accessible, make it understandable, if you're using, like, I love the idea of creating a business that uses Bitcoin like on the back end. And so just by people using whatever the useful product or service that you've provided them, in this case, probably be a service, could be a digital service, that there's somehow also creating reservation demand for Bitcoin. Now, different ways to think about this. But like, if you become a MicroStrategy customer or a strategy customer, right? Well, then you're giving more revenue to that business. That business puts Bitcoin on its balance sheet. So you're sort of indirectly contributing to the monetization of Bitcoin. That's a kind of an obvious example. There might be certain social media apps or like Nostr apps that are sending Bitcoin as zaps. So if you increase the activity on these platforms, you're actually increasing the reservation demand for Bitcoin. If you build a Lightning wallet or a Lightning-based service of some kind, you could actually be contributing to the proliferation of the Lightning network and thus more demand for Bitcoin. So I think those are the two big ones. You got to educate, and then you need to build something that people use that either creates more demand for Bitcoin or makes Bitcoin more usable for other people. I think these are the best paths to go down.
Yeah, I agree. I do want to ask you quickly my very last question, because I ask everyone the same question, which is, what is a core belief that you will never let go of?
Above all, freedom. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.